We're beginning on Daf Mesechtes Nedarim Daf Peches. We begin on the bottom of Pezayin Mabeis, 3 lines up at the bottom of the Amud, where the Gemara will ask a contradiction on the halacha of our Mishnah. We had mentioned in our Mishnah 2 halachas. First halacha was, the guy says, I know there are Nedarim, but I didn't know that you could be made for the Nedarim. So when you find out about it, you can be made for, because that's not considered B'yem Shammai. The second halacha of our Mishnah, a guy says, well, I knew that I could be made for my wife's Nedarim, but I didn't know that this is that type of neder that in that category, because not every neder could be made for. When he finds out that this was the type of neder that he could have, we had a machlokes in the Mishnah, Reb Meir said, no, you cannot be made for. And the Chacham said you could be made for. We had 2 interpretations of the Ran. What was their machlokes was regarding, did Reb Meir say that you could never be made for? Because when you hear about it the first time, it wasn't really enough because you didn't really know that this was the type that you could be made for. And when you end up finding out, but you already really heard on the first time, so it's like, we said that like really, it's like the worst of both, or is it only that you cannot be made for the later time? And the Chacham said you could be made for, again, there was 2, we'll elaborate in the Gemara, but the Gemara is going to ask a contradiction, seemingly what's inferred from their concept of how they hold from a different halacha regarding someone who kills b'shegig. Today's daf. Some of the discussed in today's daf are, what does the pasuk mean b'yem shammai? When it says that the husband is going to hear on the date that he hears about it, he's going to be made for it. What is it? Is it what it fits into that category of hearing but not really knowing? And when he ends up knowing, is that qualifying as b'yem shammai? The halacha b'yad isha yad bailam. Someone gives a gift. Al-manash in labal reshusba, then it's different. Although everything that a woman gets is like her husband's, but someone could give it to her and say, well, I'm only giving to you that your husband has no reshus, and then it's not going to be considered as his. Ritzich b'shaygig is the halacha. If someone kills by mistake, he has to go into galus. The Gemara is going to introduce regarding a summa, someone who's blind, a machlekes regarding if he's going to go into galus or not, because he doesn't really know at all, and it has to be that only he'll be here he doesn't know, but generally he does know. Shetufim advice is the way that in Talmudic times they used to have the homes were built around courtyards, and the courtyards opened up at the Mavah, and the Mavah opened them into the Rishus HaRabim. And what happens is that really Me'ikar Adin, biblically, it's considered Rishus HaYachad. But rabbinically, it could be confused with like Rishus HaRabim, so they said you can't carry over there. But the rabbis allowed when the Mava'is are Meshutaf, if they're partnering together, that is, you put food in one of the Chatzeros, they're considered like they all live over there. Now, really, then you would have to go to collect every single person and get some food and put into the barrel, so that they're partners and they all there are in that one Chatzer where they live. However, that would be very, very tedious. So what happens is one guy could go ahead and says, hey, this barrel, everyone has a share in that barrel, and the Gemara is going to explain regarding how does he go ahead and be mazaka that, according to whom would it be a handing over that they're including other people, and because it can't be him. So in Suffolk, it has to be mazaka people. Who could he give it to as a shliach for the kahal to be considered as if they're zeicha in that food? So we're going to go on Daf Pei Zayin on the base, 3 lines up at the bottom of the Amud. We had a machlekes remain the chacham that we just mentioned regarding a partial, and this is the main idea, a partial awareness of the woman's neder that he could be made for. Meaning, like the words of the Mishnah were, he says, I know that there are mefirin, but I know that there are cases I could be made for, but I didn't know that this is that type of neder. I didn't know, that's taka, this is one of those nedarim. He hears about it a week later. Now when he hears about it, and machlekes remain says, no, you cannot be made for. Yudah says, oh, you could be mefer. Now, the Gemara is going to ask that on the principle, it seems like that what Remeir says, why can't you be mefer? Because his miktzas yediyah is not like the whole yediyah. Meaning he didn't have sufficient knowledge for the date to be considered as yom shamai, so therefore you cannot be mefer on that day. Where according to Yehuda, you could be mefer because the miktzas yediyah is kol yediyah, it's sufficient to be considered yom shamai. Lamaisi, you know some of it, as we're going to explain in the Ran. So that's the basis the Gemara is going on when it's going to ask the following contradiction. Vidaminu. There seems to be contradiction from a Braisa that quotes a pasuk about Midbar. Pasuk says, if someone kills by mistake, he has to go into Galus. And the words of the pasuk are that he killed below Ra'is, without seeing. He didn't realize this guy's here, he didn't see it, and he falls on him and he dies. He did it by mistake, he has to go into Galus. So we have a machlekes, says the Braisa, Prat Lisuma. That excludes a blind person that kills someone by mistake. He will not go into galus. Why? Because it says b'lei rois without seeing. It sounds like, oh, only over here he didn't see. But it sounds like elsewhere he could see. Just here he didn't see. So therefore, the Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, So that excludes a blind person because he never sees, not only right over here. Now, Reb Meir says, no, to the contrary, l'rabes es asuma. We're coming to include a blind person. Why would that be? So, because like the Ran explains, since he holds that a partial awareness, which is that he senses when he's coming to him, even though he doesn't have a full awareness, because he cannot totally focus his place because he doesn't see, even so, it's like a complete awareness, and therefore, it is considered that he does know, and just over here, he just didn't see because he does have somewhat of awareness. That's why Remeir holds that Asuma is being included in this halacha of going to Galus. Now, what's the stira between this Braisa and our Mishnah? So there's two interpretations, again, depending on which one of the two interpretations around that's quoted in the Mishnah. According to the first interpretation we explained in the Mishnah, the Ran says the Gemara's question is as follows. We have a stira Remeir on Remeir, and we have a stira Rebehuda on Rebehuda. Because here in this Braisa, Remeir is saying, what does B'lei Ra'is come to tell us? It's including a blind person, meaning, even though obviously a blind person does not have full awareness, but still, the Remeir holds, Miktsas Yediyah, he has a partial awareness. We know a blind person has a greater sensory awareness because of his hearing and everything becomes more acute because he does not able to see. So that partial awareness is like a total awareness. Now, in the Mishnah, Remeir said that the husband cannot be mefer with the knowledge that he knows that this is a neder, meaning that he knows he can mefer nedarim, but he does not know that this is one of those nedarim. That's not sufficient. So obviously, that a partial awareness is not like a whole awareness. If you only know that you could be mefer nedarim, but you don't know this is one of those, that's not considered, according to Remeir, he says, lo yafer, that's not considered b'yem shamay. So that's a steer in Remeir. Does he hold Miksas Yediyah is Kukol Yediyah or not? It's interesting, like these two different sugyas are very different, but the way the Ran is explained, the Gemara's basic question is regarding, do you say Miksas Yediyah is Kukol Yediyah or not? From the Bryce, it sounds like that he says it is. That's why a blind person is considered like as if he is aware. But in our Mishnah, it sounds like that it's not, and therefore Remeir holds you cannot be made for it's not considered B'yem Shamay. And what's the steer in Rabbi Yehuda? Here Rabbi Yehuda says that B'lei Ra'is is excluding a blind person. Oh, obviously, because he holds that a partial awareness that a blind person has is not like total awareness, and therefore he's not going to be deemed for gullus. In the Mishnah, however, the Rabbanan is Rabbi Yehuda, who he's always the one that disputes Remeir. In the Mishnah, he says that yes, you could be mefer on that day when you just know that you could be mefer nedarim, even though you don't know this and that you can be mefer. Obviously, he holds that a partial awareness is like a total awareness. So that's the stira. Now, the Ran just points out that the reisha that says that you could be mefer on the following day, meaning if let's say you said that I know that my wife, that there are nedarim that you can be mefer, but I didn't know that I could be mefer, that the reisha that said that says that I know what my wife made was a neder, I just didn't know that the baal could be mefer. So there that we said you could be mefer the following day, he says that's not difficult because we hold that whoever doesn't know that he could be mefer, that's not even considered like a partial yediyah at all. So that's not difficult. Like, what do you do with the mandam and mixtas yediyah could call yediyah? It's considered like you didn't have an yediyah at all. So that's all according to one interpretation of the Ran. The Ran says, according to his last interpretation of the Mishnah, where he had a different way of qualifying their machlokes, that he said that the machlokes was when your mayor says lo yafer, specifically on the following day, but on that day you could be mefer without yediyah. So and the chacham who said that at yafer it means you could be mefer on the following day because they hold that the first day is not considered yediyah. So that makes a whole very different interpretation for the contradiction. So he explains according to that opinion it's like this: Remeir who said lo yafer in the Mishnah was saying on the following day, and the Rabbanan disagree, and they say that no, even on the following day, because to the contrary, they hold mixed yediyah is not like a kol yediyah, which is really the flip of how we said in the first interpretation. So according to that, says the Ran, there's no stira in Rabbi Yehuda, because to the contrary, Rabbi Yehuda actually makes a lot of sense, because over here and in the Mishnah, he holds that mixed yediyah is not like kol yediyah. That's exactly what he's holding here, that the summa is going to be excluded because it's only a mixed yediyah. And the Mishnah, according to the second interpretation of the Ran, that to the contrary, the reason why you chacham am yafer, it means on the following day when he hears about it, Why could he hear about he already had B'yam Shama the first day? No, because that's not considered B'yam Shama because that was only mixed Yediyah. But the steer would be in Reb Meir. What's the steer in Reb Meir? So the way the Ran explains it is that because of the Reisha, Reb Meir agrees from the first halacha of our Mishnah that you could be made for what's called B'yam Shalachar, the day you end up hearing that a husband could be made for. And according to this interpretation around, it's exactly what he didn't say in this first interpretation, even though there is a partial Yediyah. In the first interpretation, Ram was saying that's not even considered as a partial Yediyah. So it's like no Yediyah at all. The way he's saying it for this second interpretation is, nice, he had a partial Yediyah, because you knew that this is a neder. Obviously that Remeir holds a partial Yediyah is not like a whole Yediyah. This that he says in the Sefer that you cannot be Mefer, that's because since he knows that there are Mefirin, that's considered as a full Yediyah. And therefore he cannot be made from the following day. Not because of mixed Yediyah, because of a full Yediyah. Again, there's a lot of nuances over here. But where there's only like a mixed Yediyah, like the Reisha, that's how the Ran's calling that, it's a mixed Yediyah. You know there are Nadarim, you didn't know that you could be made from the Nadarim, that's not considered like a Yediyah. So that's how you see from Meir in the Mishnah. Yet here in the Brisa, when he says he's including a blind person, obviously he considers a partial Yediyah like a whole Yediyah. So that's a stira in Reb Meir. Now, says the Ram, but it's difficult to me. What's the Gemara's question? What do you mean? It's pretty obvious. Over here in the halacha of Galus is different because we're being medayik from a pasuk. The pasuk says prat l'rabas sasuma. So yes, fakert. Why is Reb Meir difficult? Of course, in the Mishnah he holds that mixtas Yediyah is like not like a Yediyah. So, but regarding the blind person, the reason why it's considered as Kakol Yediyah is only because we have a Rebbe in the pasuk. And if you're going to say that the Gemara is asking, but learn out from that pasuk, and therefore the halacha of our Mishnah should be the same, so then what's the Gemara answering right now of Amar Rava? So on that the Ran says that we hold in the Havamina that really remained Yehuda in the halacha of the Galus with the Summa, with the blind person, was not really being medayik from the Pesukim. That the pasuk sounds like this or sounds like this. No. Each Tana was saying how his svara is, how he believes logic would tell us. And each one is just relying on the pasuk like what's called a smachta be'alma. But really, it's not based on the pasuk. And therefore the Gemara is asking, saying, okay, so what do you hold? Do you hold mixtas Yediyah, Kakol Yediyah or not? And that the Gemara continues on top of Peichas and Aleph. Amar Rava says it's not the way you understood in the Havamina, that they're just svara be'alma, they're just logic, and therefore you're asking a question. Rather, he says, hacha minyan dekra and v'hacha minyan dekra. That you can't say learn out from it, because Nadarim and Ritzeach have no commonality to them. And here we're learning out from Psukim. So the truth is, Reb Meir does not hold that a partial Yediyah is like a whole Yediyah, as we thought in the Havamina regarding a blind person regardless. And as we see in the Mishnah, therefore he holds that, you cannot be Mefer. Over here by the blind person who killed B'Shaygig, that he's including the blind person. So you see, mixed Yediyah, Kakol Yediyah. No, that's because of a Ribri in the pasuk. The way you learn that from Psukim, as the Gemara explains. Yehuda held by the one who kills by mistake. It says in the pasuk that his friend came into the forest. He's chopping trees. He didn't see, and he kills the guy. Now, when it says that he comes into the forest, it sounds like kol devar me'al liyar, whoever could come into the forest. Now, a blind person who's also there with the guy, the victim, the guy who killed him by mistake, he's also someone who comes into the forest by mistake, meaning the guy who killed by mistake. Now, therefore, as follows: if you're going to say if you're going to say that without seeing is l'rabes hasuma is including a blind person, says Rabbi Yehuda, then miyar nafkele. I already know from the words of the pasuk of coming into the forest. I already know a blind person is included. Elishmaminos. Obviously, when it says b'loy ra'is, must be it's prat l'suma. It's excluding a blind person and the way you would have to understand what the pasuk is telling you, that because it sounds like he only doesn't see here, but he sees somewhere else. But again, it's based on, you can't really say that it's because he holds mixtas Yediyah lav Kakol Yediyah. No, I could hold like maybe Rabbi Yehuda says in the Mishnah, depending on which interpretation of the Ran, mixtas Yediyah is Kakol Yediyah. Over here I'm excluding a blind person. Yeah, you have to say that because what's the pasuk coming to tell you? To include? It can't be. I already would know that from the words of the Yar. Whereas Rabbi Meir held No, it says a different part of the pasuk. It says ksib b'blida, says if a guy killed him without awareness. Sounds like called dvar meida. Whoever has awareness. Now, a blind person does not have an awareness because he can't know and have logistics to precisely know where his friend is in the forest at that time. And therefore, if you're going to say, listen, if you're going to say that without saying is excluding a blind person, I don't need that. I already know to exclude a blind person from without awareness. Rather, obviously, it's like a mirach. It's like excluding and excluding again. Well, that's called in el rabis, comes to include. But without seeing is l'rabis is including a blind person. Therefore, there's no contradiction in these opinions of Meir and Rabbi Yehuda because it's based on the drasha and the pasuk regarding a blind person that has nothing to do with the svara ba'alma that they hold regarding the laws of Nedarim of mixed yediyah, gekol yediyah.
So even though they're totally different concepts, because they're both a miyut, we will.
Where in the pasuk of the galus? Beli das and beli re'os.
There was a man that said that because they were so different that we couldn't learn one from the other, but yet because the miyut and the miyut.
Wait, no, that was the context of Nedarim and galus. We said that those are two different contexts, but we said but the svara it would be the same. And the Gemara answers, yeah, but we're not going here by galus based on svara. We're going based on the drasha, how to expand the pasuk. Which how do you translate what Belay Reis is coming to teach us? And their machlekes in Belay Reis how to translate is how they're comparing it to other words in the pasuk. There's other words of Belay Das, and there's other words of Asher Yove Eserei Bayar. The inference based on either one of those words, you have to know why did he compare it to that and what was his starting point. But either way, they're saying, well, if I would say to include or exclude, I already know it from this. Must be that Belay Reis is either including or excluding. But the main point that the Gemara is saying is it's meinyan de kra, it's a drasha, and therefore it's not reflecting on their halachic logic of, do we say miktzas yediyas kekol yediyah? That's their machlekes in our Mishnah. Do you say a partial awareness like a whole awareness? Is that considered like it's already b'yem shamay or not? And don't ask a contradiction from the laws of Gullus, because that's not based on logic, that's based on drashas of meinyan de kra, and therefore that's why they say differently regarding the laws over there versus our Mishnah over here. Now the Gemara continues the halacha, the next Mishnah continues regarding a neder as it relates to one's daughter. But it's not specifically regarding his daughter, it's actually regarding the infamous son-in-law, the item. Someone takes a neder for prohibiting his son-in-law from having benefit from him. Now, but he still likes his daughter and wants to give money to his daughter. Now, the Ran just points out why we talk about money, because if he would be giving her food, he wouldn't have to tell her anything, as we're going to see in the Mishnah, as it is when you give her money, because her husband has no rights to the food that he gives his daughter. That's actually what we learned in the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Ches, that we said that if someone has a neder against someone, he can feed his wife, and he doesn't have to say as long as your husband has no rights to it, because since he's feeding her in the place of the husband has no rights to that food, because even if a husband gives his wife a certain amount of food, which he owes to her, and she scrimps and she saves, the husband has no rights in that excess food that she saves, as the Gemara says in Masechtas Nazar, that when she scrimps and saves from the dough that she has, for sure, if someone else is feeding her, that the husband has no rights in that food. So therefore, we're saying specifically he wants to give his daughter money, which that he wants her that some spending money. His husband is a thrift. He doesn't give her anything. So the father wants, and his son-in-law he's not allowed to have his son-in-law have any hana. So if you give the daughter money, then the husband has rights to that. As the Gemara says in Cheskes Abatim, that we say when she gets money, the halacha requires that she buys a piece of property and the husband eats the payers. So it comes out, if he's going to give his daughter money, the father-in-law is going to be benefiting his Adam, his son-in-law, which he's not allowed to because he took a neder for prohibiting his son-in-law. So what does he do? How does he give his daughter money? So what he has to do is like this. He tells his daughter that the money that I'm giving to you is given to you as a gift. And this is what he has to do. As long as your husband has no rights to them. And he says, only what you pick up and you put into your mouth. So like the Ran explains, it's specifically where he tells her these two terminologies. That your husband has no rights, and rather only what you put in goes to your mouth. If he would only say your husband has no rights, that wouldn't be effective. Why? Because the Mishnah is like Meir who holds the halacha is yad isha kyad baila. As the Gemara is going to explain. Whatever the woman gets, goes to her husband. So if you're going to say, if that's the case, so even when he tells her also only what you put into your mouth, why is that effective? I thought whatever the woman gets goes to the husband. So the reason is because since the woman is not going to be zaycha, his daughter is not going to be zeich in these monies until she actually puts the object into her mouth. At that moment, the husband has no rights in them. And therefore, it's specifically where he tells her, Mashat noisanis lapicha. But if he tells her what you're going to get dressed with, let's say, only then it's yours, or something like that, it's not effective because the husband's going to acquire it and he's going to be benefiting his Adam. Someone that says around, no, it's even to be designated for anything, let's say for clothing, that the husband's not going to acquire because even she doesn't really fully acquire it. It's only for that utility. So therefore, it's not, you can't say the woman is acquiring it, so the husband should be acquiring. Because he says, no, you could only have it for this. So therefore, it's like a limiting principle, which wouldn't be a violation of the kana labala, and he wouldn't be benefiting for the husband because it's not really even the wife's even. It's not really his daughter's. It's only for that he lets her to use it.
Couldn't you give her food and say it's not yours, so it goes to your mouth?
The same principle as you want to say for regarding the clothing. I mean, that's really what he is saying. He's saying, no sense in the sense beficha. No, this is money. This is money, and then you're spending it, and when you spend it, when it goes into your mouth, the father. I see one who technically owns it. I'm saying it l'chayra because right, if it's hers, then they should go to the. Unless you say it in the halachic principle, I'm only giving it to you for that. That's like the second interpretation of the round. That like you could even use it for clothing then because it's never really fully yours. I'm limiting in what I'm giving you the acquisition for. Yeah, you have to know which one of those interpretations is being said. Now, Rav says, we didn't learn the heter of our Mishnah, this chap, this, to get around this loophole and giving something to your daughter even though you don't want to benefit your son-in-law, is el da'amal, it's only if he tells her, Mashat loisas b'neisanas beficha, only what you pick up and you put into your mouth. In other words, like exactly like the wording of the Mishnah, where he says both these points, on the condition that your husband has no rights in it, rather only what you pick up and put into your mouth. Only then would it be that the husband's not acquiring it. But let's say he says, Masha tirtzi asi, whatever you want to do, you could do with it. He says, no, matachtar, I'm giving it to you, you can do whatever you want with it. Kani yasin bal. Then the husband is going to acquire it, because, as the Ran explains, saying what you want to do with it, you could do, is not any more effective than saying your husband has no rights in it. And therefore, since saying your husband has no rights in it itself is not effective, when you say these two terminologies of like, whatever you want to do with it, it's also not going to be effective because it's really all the same teaching. So that wouldn't be enough. Now, Shmuel Amma, he says, no, Phila Amma, even if you say, Mashatirtzi Asi, that whatever you want with it, you can do with it, Loi Kana Yasin Baal, the husband is not going to acquire it. Now, the Ran, as he explains in Ahmed Beis, he says, Shmuel's not disagreeing with Rav in how to explain the Mishnah. He most definitely agrees that the halacha of the Mishnah, if the father-in-law says to his daughter, whatever you want to do with it, you can do, is not effective. He's only disagreeing with Rav in the halacha. Rav explains the Mishnah like Remeir, who says, Yadi Shikad Bailo, and he also holds like him. And therefore he paskins and he says, yeah, if he tells her, do with it as you please, the husband's going to acquire it. Shmuel agrees in the halacha of the Mishnah that that's what the Mishnah is saying. But he just disagrees with him in the halacha, in the din, because he holds halachas like Rabbanan, who we don't say Yadi Shikad by whatever the woman gets, her husband gets. And therefore, if he tells her, do with it as you please, or also on the condition that your husband does not have any rights to it, even if you just say that which would be the same, that Shmuel holds would be effective. Because you hold like the Rabbanan, and it's not Yadi Sheked, but whatever the woman gets, that goes to her husband. So therefore, they're just disagreeing regarding the halacha.
Doesn't the husband get Hana anyway? Happy wife?
Yeah. So yeah, but that would seemingly be a little indirect. So that's what we always talk about, that when the person takes a neder prohibiting Hana from someone, if he sees the guy smiling on the street, and he gets chap sanua, I don't know if that's considered as a direct Hana, as happy wife, happy life. So Maskevla Reb Zera asks on Rav. Let's continue to Beis. He says, wait a second. According to who is the Rav's teaching going like? It's going to Remeir. Meaning the Amar that he says, and this is brought in the first parak of Kedushin of Chav Goyim al Beis regarding an Eved Kanani, that we say the hand of the slave is like the hand of the master. And the same thing is also, it sounds like to Reb Zera, that he understands in the opinion of Rav that he also holds that the hand of a woman is the Yad Ishakad Baila. The hand of the woman is like the hand of the husband, and that's why he explains the halach of the Mishnah. He says, okay, so it's not going to help to say to the daughter, say, Tachtar, okay, this is just for you, not for your husband. That doesn't help. Because whatever she gets goes to her husband. You have to go through and say only what you put into your mouth, and then it's going to be yours, and then it's already too late for the husband. The problem is, V'neminu. Seems to be a contradiction in Mishnah Masechtas Erevin. Meaning, because, as Taisa explains, a Stam Mishnah is like Remeir, and therefore, the Mishnah Erevin would seemingly be Remeir. So what's the contradiction? So it says the Mishnah as follows. The Mishnah says, Ketzad Mishtatvin b'mavli. How do you do what's called shitufim mavayis? Meaning, a mavai is that all the courtyards would open up into this alleyway, and then the alleyway opens up into the street. Now, the truth is, from rabbinic law, each person is forbidden to go ahead and carry his vessels that spend Shabbos in his house out into the mavai through the courtyard. Until you do a shitufim mavayis, then you combine all the chatzeres in the mavai. Now, how do you join them together? What's the halachic principles? What's the process of making like we're all one home? So manich has a chavis. What you do is you put a barrel of wine, that everyone should be partners in this barrel, so that the mavai should be considered like a Rosh Hashanah for everyone. Now, how do you do this? Again, we would have to go around and collecting from every single person wine. You'd spend all day. So what you do is, you put a barrel and you say, this is for all the people of the mavai, that they have a portion and rights in that barrel. Now, the thing is, but someone has to be makabel for them. You can't just be mezakah them. Someone has to receive it for them. So how do you do that? So mezakah, and you can merit it to them through your Jewish maidservant or servant, where they have what's called a yad. They have ability to be zaycha in something, because they're independent. The Jewish slave is not owned by his master. Or he could even get his older adult son and daughter, who they're also independent, so they have their own yad. Or through his wife. Says the Gemara, wait a second. If you're going to say like Rav, when he explains the opinion of Meir in our Mishnah, that kana yasin bala. Could you tell me that the yad yishikad ba'ila, and that's why he explained the halacha of our Mishnah, that it's not enough to say, that your husband's not going to have any rights to it, because that wouldn't be sufficient, because yad yishikad ba'ila. So wait a second. So the Mishnah Erevin is also a mayor, because it's a stam masnitin. So wait a second. Erev lo nothing mishus to the baal. How does it help to give it to your wife to be zaycha for everyone else? But since a woman doesn't have a yad without her husband, so the barrel is still in the husband's rishus. And the people in Mavit weren't zeichin it yet. So how does it help to give it to your wife to be zeich of everyone else? Her hand is his hand. Yad ishikad bailo, so it never left his rishus. How can you give it to your wife to be zeich of the people in the Mavit? Some Rava says it's not difficult. Why not? Because this case is different. That afal gaf, the even the Remeir says yad ishikad bailo. Yeah, the hand of a wife is like the hand of the husband. Therefore, in the halacha of the Mishnah, we said that the father-in-law would have to do something stronger measures. But Moed Remeir in Shittim, it's not difficult for the Mishnah Erevin. Remeir agrees regarding the halacha of partnership of a mavai. The kiv nilazachas lachem, who the whole purpose of giving it to the wife, the barrel of wine, was to that other people should merit in it. Miyad by lazachia, she merits it from the rishus of the husband, because as Aran explains, although that Remeir says that there's no kinyan for a woman without her husband, that's only when someone else gives her a gift. It's going to be automatically the husband's. But Remeir would agree that when the husband's giving a gift to the woman, she's going to be kaina, and the husband's not going to eat the pears over there, as he says, as we see in Cheskes Habatim, and we don't find Remeir disagreeing that halacha. So here also, since the husband Lamaisa is giving it to the wife, it's leaving his rishus. Even though he's not literally giving it to her, he's just giving it to be zeicha for others, he would agree in that case that she would be zeicha because it's not something she's giving to someone else, he's giving it to her. He's giving it to her, then she would be zeicha. Now, however, Esvei Vina Ravashi. Vina asked Ravashi, which, as the Ran explains, it's not coming to really contradict Rava, because without Rava, the Mishnayos are these Mishnaic texts are difficult on their own. It's just coming to reject the teretz of Rava to pose the contradiction on each other, like we had the contradiction that we asked. Now, so we're rejecting that answer. Why? Because the Mishnah there says in Erevin, it says, now, Elu shezachan lehen, these individuals that you could make a zikui with, of the shituf, are alidei b'noi ubita gedolim, through his adult sons and daughters, the avdai b'shevchase ivrim, and his Hebrew slave or maidservant. But ve'elu she'en zachan, the following that you could not do zchi with, is alidei b'noi ubita getanim, through your minor sons and daughters, because they don't have a yad, they don't have the ability to be zeich and anything, they're minors. Or va'avdi b'shevchase kananim, the non-Jewish slave or slave woman, where they don't have a yad either, because whatever they get goes straight to their master. And ve'ishtoi, his wife, her hand is also like his hand. The question is, wait, why? Didn't Rava say wherever the husband is mezaka to others through her, then she does have a yad? That's what Rava just answered. You see from the Brisa, not like that. You see that the wife is not a valid option. So Elam Ravashi says, you're right. the Masnit in the Mishnah Masechet is Erevin, when we said that you can be mezaka to the others through his wife, that's specifically talking about b'sheyesh lo chatzar ba'isam av askina. That's talking about where she herself has a courtyard in that same mavoi. What does that mean? How does she have a chatzar? For example, let's say something she yarshin, she inherited when she was engaged, and during the engagement, the chassan wrote to her, "Dinu dvarim ein li b'nechsayich." I have no rights to your nechasim. Such a situation would be effective, as the Gemara explains, that the chassan, the husband, will never be zeich in it. So the migad is achel nafsha, since she has the ability to be zeicha for herself, meaning to permit her own courtyard, because when the husband gives her gift to the wife, even Rameh would agree that she has a yad, like we said before. So zachel achrini. So therefore, she's zeicha for others. In other words, for all the people of the mavoi. The Bryce that says it's not going to be valid to do it through the wife is talking about when she does not have her own chatzar. Then, since we hold yadoi ki yad haba, like we explained in Rav, therefore she's not going to be able to be zeicha for others, and therefore in such a situation, we're saying that it would not be effective. So therefore, it's not a contradiction in those two mishnayos, meaning Rava made sense. But we just said that the contradiction would seem to make it away, and we're saying no, that doesn't contradict because it would depend if she has her own chatzar or not. But again, Rava's answer to answer the halacha of our Mishnah, and that it doesn't contradict Rameh and Erevin, that also that does stand, because although he says Yadi Shukat Baila, but when the husband's giving it to her, and specifically when she has her own chatzah, so Migid Zach Achrina, then it would be effective. And then Raj just has all arichas where we pass like very interesting discussion regarding Rav and Shmuel. Do we say that it's considered Isser, or is it considered that of Din? And therefore, how do we paskin regarding this machlekes Rabbi Shmuel that we're saying in this halacha of Mishnah? Do we say like Rameh or do we say like Rabban? Thank you to any time for hosting us.
She has the own